I am Christine Johnson. I'm the president of the Conservation Foundation of the Gulf Coast. Our headquarters are up in Osprey in Sarasota County. And of course, been asked today to speak about the future for land conservation, specifically to our region, but of course I'll be talking about Amendment 1. So, I'm sure I'm speaking to a crowd of the choir, and we all know that 75% of the voters last November voted for a Florida Water and Land Legacy Amendment. Yay, yay! Of course, in this region, it was higher than the state average of 75%. And of course, you all know that that's for 20 years. And there's a sunset after 20 years. The funding won't be going to Florida Land Acquisition Trust Fund. Comes from 1/3 of the dock stamp revenues. And estimated that about $750 million from the revenue is going to be coming in this year. However, about $350 million of that was needed, somewhere between $3 and $350, was needed for the debt service. So a couple of years ago, they floated a bond that would be paid for the stream of payments from this revenue source to accelerate land acquisition. So of the $750, let's just call it $350 was going towards the bond payments. And what we're looking at then is how much then for land acquisition. Bunch of us got together and said, well, it all shouldn't go for land acquisition. Some of it should go for maintenance. And we put together a pretty good straw man and presented it to the governor as well as the House and Senate of the state. The rest of the story is they decided to do the shell game. And they changed how the Florida Land Acquisition Trust Fund is to be dispersed before they finalized the budget. That allowed them to then use it for salaries, and not new salaries. We didn't get more people working on land protection or land stewardship in the state. It was existing salaries and existing computers. So what ended up happening was only about $12 million went for land acquisition, not including a couple earmarks in the budget for some land acquisition projects that some of our elected officials who didn't agree with Amendment 1 wanted to bring home to their constituents. So, Earth Justice, thank you very much, filed a lawsuit. And of course that's in the courts, and we're all waiting with bated breath to hear how that's going to end. But we have 19 years to go. So we have to keep fighting. We have to keep fighting for our elected officials to do what the voters voted for. But that's not the only money we have coming into the state for land acquisition or restoration. It's a BP settlement. $18.5 billion is coming in just one of the buckets from the BP oil spill. Florida is, or 18.5 is coming into the 5 states, Florida is getting $3.2 billion. Sarasota County is getting about 14.2, and Manatee in this region about 1.44. We're waiting to hear what they're going to use it for. Sometimes we hear they're going to use it to balance the budget. Sometimes we hear about restoration. I think I saw some people from Manatee County. The last I heard is Manatee County is going to use it for beach restoration. I don't mean renourishment, I mean restoration. So hats off to Manatee County if that's what's going to be used for the funds. Also, Sarasota County filed the lawsuit for punitive damages and received $3.2 million for the Deepwater Horizon. What are they going to use that money for? They're going to use it to bridge operational budget shortfalls, and that has been decided. So a little disappointing there as well. Furthermore, also, Sarasota County, since 1999, has said citizens voted to tax themselves 0.25 of their property taxes to go towards land acquisition for Environmentally Sensitive Lands Program. It's called SLIP in our county. And in 2005, they voted to continue that. And they extended it to neighborhood parkland. So far, this program since 1999 is about 43,000 acres has been protected, and that's just a wonderful success story. But when we saw the economic downturn and we saw our home values go down, of course, then the revenue also went down. And not much has been going on with acquisition, either in parklands or in environmentally sensitive lands protection. So we have some pent-up demand. It's estimated about 700 properties are on the list. Of those 700 properties, though, we don't know how many are still wanting to work with the county to save their land. Some of it's fees, some of it's conservation easements. So the county staff has determined, or is determining, that this year they're going to update the list, determine if the property owner who is willing to work with them to save their land is still the same property owner, is still wanting to save, and they're going to prioritize the list. We did hear, and we did some advocating work with the county commission, that they thought that up to 0.25 really should be dropped down some, but with a campaign from concerned citizens, they decided not to do that this year. But again, every year, yes, every year we will have to make sure that they keep it at that 0.25. Wanted to share with you some of the properties that Conservation Foundation is working on. These 4 properties are in the Myakka, what we're calling the Myakka Island Conservation Corridor Project. In Tallahassee, on the Florida Forever list, you'd find it in the Myakka Ranch Lands area, that project. So there's 4. I'm pointing to the screen like you can see me. Where is the... Maybe can you see me if I use this? Okay. So there's actually 2 properties right here, Murphy's Marsh and Triangle Ranch. They're in what's called the Tatum Sawgrass Marsh. It is the largest depression marsh in the Myakka River Basin that's not protected. These 2 properties will bridge the gap between the Myakka River State Park and the NRCS CE conservation easement here to the north. We're very proud about this. They are under option with the landowners, and we're trying to raise funds, and it's on the Florida for a list to do that. Sheps Island Ranch. How many of you have been to Myakka River State Park? Well, of course the Rangers have, but a lot of you have. Great. If you're standing at the northern campground looking across the lake, a lot of people think you're looking at the Myakka River State Park property. You're looking at Sheps Island Ranch. And just behind it, right here on the west, is heavy density housing developments. So it's enormously important to your experience if you're in the park looking across that lake. And then how many of you are familiar with this, what I call famous, some call infamous piece of property right down here? It's now called Orange Hammock Ranch. Before that, it was called McCall Ranch. And before that, it was called Isles of Athena. Back when it was called Isles of Athena, the developer thought he could develop all of this with heavy density, and he went bankrupt. It's gone into different different owners. It's been on the list for Swiftmud to conserve for decades. It's been on Sarasota County's SLIP list since 2010, and we are taking a swing at it and hopefully going to be successful in saving it within the next 2 years. It's the largest undeveloped contiguous piece of property in Sarasota County. And what's important about this piece of property is what I think most people are concerned about here in Florida, and that is water. It's been estimated by some that the Snover waterway right here receives 60 to 70% of its water supply from this piece of property. That's Northport's water supply. So these are the 4 properties. And when we talk about them with our elected officials, we don't really talk about the maps so much as we talk about what they look like. And here's Triangle Ranch. 3 miles of the Myakka River go through it. This is Sheps Island, Murphy's Marsh, and Orange Hammock Ranch. Very well maintained over the years. So what we're trying to do is, not to sound like a preacher, but really to evangelize, if that's a word, that we need to talk to our elected officials. We need to engage them in a way that doesn't make their eyes roll back in their head, that doesn't make them think that we're left-wing lunatics, but that they understand how our economy is so tied to our environment. It is our economy. If you want to grow, you need water. If you want clean water, you need to use the land. We say the land is the green lungs of our blue waters. So I ask everyone here today to contact your local and your Tallahassee representatives and talk to them and know what their interests are. Is it economy? Is it tourism? Is it the environment? Are they hunters? I mean, just finding out what they personally are involved in, and then start to tell stories. Because we have data. We have tons of data to talk about why it's important to conserve land, why it's important to do water protection and restoration. But what we've found, and others like all of you out there have found, it's really stories. You know, it's telling them about that underprivileged teenager who for the first time put her toes in muck in the Sarasota Bay when she lives less than a mile from it. It's about telling them about kids who squeal with delight and ick factor when they're pulling a seine net through the bay for the first time. It's talking to them in what I call word pictures, because we have data to support it, and if they want to go down the rabbit hole with us, the data, we could definitely do that. But what really seems to be resonating with them are those stories, and we like to call it's the so what. So connecting those dots. And so I'm here today just to ask you to please engage with those elected officials, tug on those heartstrings, and tell them that our data is here, but we're really here to tell you about some wonderful success stories. One of the most successful times in talking to elected officials was about, and I'm just going to tell you a story right now, as an elected official said, you know what, I can't be concerned about the environment right now. I've got kids shooting themselves. And so I shifted the conversation about how nature deficit disorder is a real thing and how it can help kids with depression. And told them stories that I have heard from parents and teachers about getting kids outside. But you know what? We're losing our public access. We're losing the opportunities for public access. And now he's a believer in needing public lands for our kids to enjoy. I don't need to tell you guys this. We are the last generation that can save this land in Florida. 20 years is probably an optimistic view of what we can do to save the properties that need to be saved. So thank you today. Thank you for your attention this late in the afternoon. And if you guys have any questions.